Hey friend, this is the podcast you've been expecting, a dating toolbox to guide you through dating and relationships.
We are your hosts, the handsome mutant and the crazy Venezuelan girl. Stay tuned to laugh as we share our own experiences.
Thanks for joining us. In this episode, we're talking about the most common fears of dating and where to start. Along with us today, we have our guest speaker, Ellie Cohen, and she'll introduce herself.
Hi guys, I'm Ellie Cohen. I am friends with these two crazy people, and I'm excited to be here today.
Thanks so much. Ellie, what qualifies you to be on the show?
I don't know. That's a very good question. I've been trying to get that out of you guys for a while now.
Right.
But, well, I am a 28-year-old single woman living in Utah. Definitely, entrenched in the dating culture here, and, the struggle life of dating is definitely a part of my life right now. But I am also in school right now getting a master's in mental health counseling, so I have a background on relationships and how relationships work, why they don't work, and so that qualifies me, I guess, a little bit.
There you go. No, fantastic. I think we're going to start off by talking about fears, right, that people have of dating. What was either the biggest fears that you faced, or what kind of fears do you think people specifically face today when it comes to dating?
I personally believe my biggest fear was rejection. And I think that's one of the most common fears people face right now. There's always that fear of, is that person going to say yes or no to my invite? Or is that person going to, even if they say they're going on a date with you, after the date, are they going to want to go on a second date with you? And I think that's probably the biggest fear, Are we going to, if I like him or I like her, is that person going to continue to want to go out with me? What do you think, Ellie?
I agree. I think rejection is a big part of why people have a fear of dating, because I think, going on a date is so vulnerable, I think most people, like myself, when you go on a date, you're looking for something more than just that date. You're looking for your lifelong partner, and obviously that first date, you're probably not going to know if he or she is your lifelong partner, but it does put the pressure on. And then when you're rejected, it's there's something wrong with me. What is there about me that's not good enough for this person? And it's especially hard when it's someone you really liked, and so when the rejection part is really hard. I also think the culture around dating has changed completely, and I think people haven't caught up to what it means to date in our modern society. It feels very confusing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that everyone has their own idea about what dating is supposed to be like. And if you're not on the same page, then that may be such a bad rejection. I also think that sometimes we judge ourselves too hard, and we believe others will do the same. And those negative thoughts just build up into our minds. And when we go into our date with negative thoughts about what could happen or not, you express that in the way you present yourself to that person,
Right. I totally agree.
What do you guys think that we can do to overcome that big fear of rejection?
You can tell people to not take it personally, but in a way, no matter what, it's a personal thing.
It is
because
personal.
It's you that they are not wanting to see again.
Right.
And there's only so much you can do, right, to change that. Right. I think that overcoming the fear of rejection comes from two things. One is giving yourself the experience to be rejected. The more that you're rejected, the less afraid you're going to become of being rejected. You're not going to care as much about what people think the more that you kind of go through it. And I'm not saying that
you become desensitized.
Yeah, desensitized, true, yes. But I think that you become confident in yourself as well. I think there's something about rejection, the healthy side, right? So I think that a healthy way to deal with it is just to say, okay, this time it didn't work out. What can I do to myself to become a better person so that the next time I meet somebody, I'm less likely to, scare them off or whatever, however you want to think about it.
Well, and I think people go into relationships looking for very different things.
Mm-hmm.
And that is part of the rejection, and that's never talked about.
True.
You know?
On the first date, you're probably not saying, like, hey, do you want to get married? Like,
Right.
Are you dating to get married? Or are you
Right.
dating for fun? Like,
Right, and it could be as simple as, like, I mean, I've gone on dates with guys that I'm like, they're great. Like, there's nothing really wrong with them, but, like, maybe their career choice is something that would be really hard on me. Like, I dated a guy who was in the military.
mm-hmm.
Fantastic guy, you know, and I also could not live that lifestyle of like moving around, having to sacrifice like my career and my future, and then also like not having a dad around if we ever had kids. So, you know, like, and I never told him that, but that was what was going through my mind, you know. And so I think a big part of the rejection is that you don't know what is being rejected. And so when you're rejected, you automatically jump to it's because of whatever insecurity you have. Like, it's
What
because
you
my hair is
think about
ugly.
yourself.
It's because I talk too much, you know, or I have a
I
crazy
definitely
laugh.
had something in my teeth.
In my
Yes,
teeth, yeah.
exactly.
But in reality, like you said, it's probably not what you think it is.
Right.
You know, it's probably not your hair or that thing in your teeth. It might be something completely unrelated. But
I think the biggest question here, though, is asking ourselves, like, okay, that's really, like, that's lovely. Like, let's
Yeah,
say we can get
that
to a
makes sense.
spot.
Okay.
Like, let's say we can get to a spot in dating where we're like, okay, like, I don't know why he rejected me, and I'm not going to, like, dwell on the reasons why he might have. I'm just going to, like, assume the best and move on. I think getting to that point is actually really hard because I don't think people are afraid of rejection simply because they're afraid of rejection. Like, there's some personal history there that makes you afraid. So, like, the analogy that I always use is when kids look at flame for the first time, they're fascinated by it. You know, they're like, that's the most beautiful thing in the world. I want to touch it. And then they get burned and they're like, I'm never touching that again. You know? And I don't think any of us have a memory of, like, actually getting burned the first time. But we all know not to touch fire.
yeah,
You know, it's like this unconscious thing that we've learned
to avoid pain.
to avoid pain. And I think it's the same thing with dating and relationships. Like, you develop how you're going to... Let me rephrase that. So, in your earliest relationships, like children, babies, they're learning everything about the world around them. And then you put them in an environment where their needs are met or maybe not met. And then you learn about the world, like in your nuclear family. You learn about, like, okay, like if I have a need, I can ask mom for it and she'll help me with it. And if I get hurt, mom will help me. And then that doesn't always happen for other kids. And so you grow up as an adult and you have those same ideas of, like, you know, like, there's something about me that means that I shouldn't be helped or I shouldn't be wanted or whatever, because you just have had that ingrained in you since a really, really young age. And so I think it's very complicated. I don't think it's just like, stop thinking about it. You know, I think that it's like it's a
subconscious thing.
It's a subconscious thing. It's a subconscious reaction to avoid pain.
True.
Because emotional pain is painful, guys.
Right?
Right? Right. I also think it's interesting when you're on the other side, when you are the person that has to reject
somebody,
because they, like you mentioned before, they just, their lifestyle doesn't match what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And that's also a fear as well. I don't want to be rude. I don't want to be mean. I don't want to be the one that causes the other person never want to date anymore.
Yeah, you don't want to scar them emotionally
Right.
for dating.
But it's crazy, but you won't be able to marry everyone you date. You won't be able to
No.
marry every single person you ask
What a
out.
crazy idea. Wow.
Right?
Unfortunately. I'm kidding.
So you just have to try to be sure that the person you're asking out is available, that the person you're asking out, you know, might be able to be compatible with you before you ask them out. And you avoid that rejection. I don't know.
I think, yeah, if you go into it, like I think you kind of were trying to say this, like realizing that not expecting to marry a person on the first date. You know, like you don't go into the date and be like, I hope this is like the one. Like, of course you hope that you find the one, right? But you should give yourself the opportunity to like see them as like a person instead of like a relationship, right? Like
remove the pressure.
Exactly. Just like see them as a new person. Like they're just like you. First of all, if they agreed to go on a date with you, in any case, that means that they're at least somewhat interested in what you have to say, you know. And so you know that you both have the common ground of wanting to spend at least one date with each other. And so if you kind of think of it in that way as like, I'm getting to know this person, they're like a potential new friend, they're just another stranger also doing the same thing that I'm doing, like it takes a lot of it out of, oh my goodness, like would this person marry me now? Or would this person like, you know what I mean? And so I think it's better to think of it as like just a relationship or a friendship to be gained, you know.
I think you will go into it with both of those views, you know, like this is the first time I'm meeting this person and getting to know them, and I'm trying to evaluate them to see if like there's someone I want to continue knowing because I want to get married. Like that's the end goal. Mm-hmm. And we are taught to go into things with the end in mind, you know?
Yeah. And I think as well, every person kind of determines where they are at in the dating culture, if that makes sense. Because this is what I think. Like, nobody should play with somebody's feelings, right? But some people are dating just to, like, meet a lot of people. And some people are dating because they want to marry somebody.
Right.
And so it's okay to have a different reason for dating, right? I think that whether you're dating to have fun or whether you're dating to marry, I think that at least on the first date, try to kind of like you said, like alleviate all of the pressure of your expectations and just be like, okay, just focus on having a good time on that date and focus on getting to know that person. Focus on enjoying yourself too, because you don't want to go into a date all stressed or doing an activity that you don't like, and on the whole date you're thinking about how you don't want to be there and how you're stressed and how you don't like what you're doing. Like, just do what you want and don't worry about anything else. Like, do it the way that you want to do it, you know?
Right.
I think you guys are also talking about another fear. And I think that's the fear of commitment. And I think we go into the first dates, first couple days, getting to know somebody. And instead of getting to know somebody, we are already thinking, I do not want to commit right now. Or I don't know if the other I am ready to commit, but I don't know if the other person is ready to commit. And I think that's also another fear that we face so commonly now. How do you guys have personally overcome that fear, or like what are your thoughts on that?
Ali, you actually mentioned this to me. So Ali and I are married.
I don't have my ring on. I'm so sorry.
Oh my goodness! All right, mine's coming off too. No, I'm just kidding. But if you don't follow us on Instagram or read our blog, like Ali and I are married, and you mentioned this to me later after we officially were dating, you said that you were kind of afraid of committing or being in a relationship that was committed because you felt like you might not have the time or the emotional availability to properly invest yourself in a committed relationship, right? But why did you date anyway? Feeling that you were overwhelmed with school and work, feeling that you might not be ready to get married at that time or be in a serious relationship, like, why did you keep dating?
I honestly think it was the pressure of feeling like I needed to feel that part of my life.
That is like not a good answer, but I'm kidding. It's a good answer, but like
it's true. I mean, that's the truth. I feel like at 22, you are kind of told you need to go out and date people because that's part of your social life. And so even though I was doing other things, I also wanted to feel like I was fulfilling that side of my life. And even though I did not know if I was emotionally available and ready to commit at the time, I wanted to explore that.
So it sounds like you felt like you had a need for it, but you were afraid of these other things.
And I think I was also afraid of commitment because I had been with non-committal people before.
Yeah.
And I did not want to give all that I had, all the love and care and support that I had, if the other person was not going to reciprocate that. Yes. And that might be another fear, not wanting to give so much because you fear that the other person is not going to reciprocate all the time and effort you're putting into a relationship. And once I knew that you were giving me that same love and support and care I was giving you, then, you know, I decided I was ready.
That's a good point. If you feel like you want a relationship, then you should seek one whether or not you are a busy person or afraid of committing, you know what I mean? Like, I think that if you can feel that you want a relationship and if you feel like you would benefit from one and that you're ready for one, then definitely go out and date and meet people and try to make that happen. And it doesn't matter if you school full-time and work full-time and, you know, have these other things. Like, it will be stressful to try to add another thing to juggle, right? But I think that a fulfilling, healthy relationship is actually strengthening and allows you to deal with everything else in a healthier way, you know? If you have someone to share in your emotional, burden with, and if you have someone who is there to kind of support you and to relieve your stress and your anxiety, like, that's a good thing. And I mean, obviously, we have a responsibility to take care of ourselves, and we shouldn't necessarily feel like we need someone to take care of us. But I think realizing that a healthy relationship is not stressful, you know, or it shouldn't be this complicated, scary, like, man, my life is so much harder now that I'm in a relationship thing. I feel like the right kind of relationship should make your life easier. And of course there's ups and downs, right? But I'm talking about generally. Like, generally your life should be easier with someone who is good for you, right? I don't know.
Unless you don't want to spend all your money on gifts and food for other people.
Food for someone else, yeah.
If you're good with that, then it's not stressful.
There are cheap dates out there.
But I think so. How does somebody overcome these different fears of dating? Like, how do you get past those fears? Is it something you do internally? And, like, how did you guys overcome your fears of rejection and your fears of commitment and your fears of, you know, all those things? Like, how do you overcome those fears?
Well, I can come at you with an expert's answer of how to overcome it.
Okay, let's
and
hear
then
it.
I can tell you that I don't follow my own advice, but I will after this podcast. No, and it is something that I've been thinking about, and it is something I want to implement, because I'm not over the fear, right? I think it's really scary putting yourself out there. There are the fears of, like, being rejected, and then, like, the other fear that coexists is, like, the fear of being alone forever, you know?
Yes.
And you're caught between both of those.
You're caught. It's like a lose-lose. Like, if you don't try to date, then you're gonna be, like, taken over by this other fear. And like, if you choose to date, then you have the fear of rejection. That's like, so really, like, us lonely single people, we're just living in fear all the time. But, but I would say relationships, like romantic relationships, are probably the most vulnerable you will ever be in your life.
True.
It's the most vulnerable relationship you will ever have in your life. A parent to child, it's a much more unconditional love. Like, mothers love their child no matter what their child does. Spouses, partners, it's not like that. So it's a very vulnerable type of love. And it makes sense that it would be scary. It makes sense that it feels really high risk. And I would say replace the fear with a lot of love and support in other relationships. Yeah. So I would say, like, for me, I know that it's helpful when I am really vulnerable with my friends and family about, like, how painful that rejection was, or how hard it is to be single and alone and trying to date and feeling like it doesn't work out. That is where I'm able to get, like, the love and support that I need to, like, go out there again.
I think those were wise words right there.
From someone who's been through a lot of pain.
A lot of rejection.
I personally think how I overcame that fear took time.
Yeah.
It takes time, and it takes practice, and it takes
patience with yourself.
And putting yourself out there. Something that I used to tell myself every time before going to a date is, I'm going to get myself together. You know, I'm going to look the prettiest I can look.
I can be, yeah.
I am going to and English is my second language, so I always had that fear of, am I gonna say the right thing, or am I gonna like mess it up by saying she instead of he, you know?
Which still happens. Even when she talks about me, sometimes I'm a she, and I was like, I didn't know I was a she.
But I am gonna be smart. I'm gonna, put my best self out there. And if this person does not like my best self, then it's, not meant to be.
Right.
And overcoming that fear, I feel like I'm on this side of the people that are super nice, don't want to reject anyone. I want to marry everyone because, I don't want to reject anyone. And so being nice and telling the other person, it might not, work out. It might not be something that is the best thing for you or me, making sure that the other person understood that I was flattered. They asked me out, but it was not something I was interested in.
True.
And being honest, I think that's the most important thing I can say, and that's the most important advice I can give. Be honest with yourself before you put yourself out there. These are your limits. These are the things that you're looking for. Don't go out and make somebody else think that they are what you're looking for when they're not. And then they get rejected, and you feel that rejection, and somebody else is going to do the same to you. Don't do something that you don't want to.
That's right.
Be done to you.
Like, be nice to each other, right? Like you said, if somebody's not the person for you, and you don't want to continue seeing them, it's okay to just say, I think you're a great person, but it's just not what I'm looking for. And everyone is going to be rejected at some point, so it's okay.
Also, with overcoming the fear of commitment, I was overcoming the fear of commitment. I was on both sides. I was a person that did not want to commit, and I was the person who was rejected, and the other person did not want to commit to our relationship. And overcoming those two fears is super hard. I think with overcoming the fear of committing, you have to be honest with the other person and say, this is what I'm feeling, and knowing that if you give the other person a chance, means that you are giving part of yourself, putting your effort and time in that relationship. If not, then remove yourself from that situation. Be honest with the other person. And overcoming that fear of the other person doesn't want to commit to me is knowing your self-worth. Not because a person rejected you and said they didn't want to commit to you, that means that you're not worth it of having a relationship. It means that person at the time was overcoming their own fear of commitment.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things that you said is knowing your self-worth. And I think when you're really afraid of going back out there, it's because you feel like rejection is 100% guaranteed. And that comes from a place of not feeling worthy. And so I think it's really important for us to talk about that too. Like, how do you develop that self-worth so that when someone rejects you, it doesn't matter because you know for yourself that you are worthy.
Right. I think that's something that I struggled with. I'm going to talk about this fear of rejection and commitment and whatever from like a guy's standpoint. Because I think with guys, I think the biggest things that we worry about is, am I handsome enough? Like, am I attractive enough? And am I like smart enough? I think that those two things are something that like a lot of guys think about personally. Because that's kind of what I was thinking about. And I don't know, maybe I'm not the perfect example of like what most guys are thinking, but I struggled a lot with feeling like I was confident with who I was, regardless of whether or not people accepted me in terms of dating, right? Like, I'd ask somebody out that I was really interested in, really attracted to, and then they wouldn't want to go out, and then I was like, is it because I'm ugly? Is it because I don't dress well? Is it because I'm sound dumb when I speak? Is it because I'm not like talented? I'm not like bursting with all these talents and stuff, and those weren't really the reason why. It might have just been something personally they were going through, or maybe I just wasn't the personality they were looking for, And I think what I started doing for myself to kind of build my confidence and overcome with fears was I just worked on myself. Like, I invested in myself. And I know it's harder for some people than it is for others. But I think that the more that we surround ourselves with positive, uplifting influences, and the more that we, like for example, our friends and our family, like people who we know care about us and aren't going to tear us down. That's number one. So positive environments. And then number two is, if you're worried about how you look, then work on it. You know, like if you think that you don't dress well, what I started doing when I first started dating and wasn't getting a lot of dates, I was like, okay, maybe it's my style. So I would look at the college campus at guys that I thought looked really good. And so what I did is I looked at guys and I was like, okay, girls are attracted to this guy. What is he doing that I'm not doing? And so I would dress a little bit differently, right? Also, like, I went to the gym a lot more. Like, I've always kind of been into fitness and been into sports and things like that. But if I was feeling like I wasn't super confident with how I looked, then I just worked on it more. Like, I put a little more time into exercising. And other things too, like reading, for example. Like, if you're worried that you're not smart enough or that you're not super talented or you're not interesting, one powerful thing that you can do to make yourself more interesting is just build your knowledge. Like, read books about different subjects that you're interested in, things that you think are cool, and just learn about it. And when you increase your knowledge about things and when you work on yourself in those areas that you know you lack, then you're going to become more interesting to other people. The last thing that I'd say for guys is just go for it, because the thing is whether you're rejected by a girl or not, she's going to be flattered that you asked her out. If you ask out a girl and she, even if she's like out of your league and she's like way above you and you can tell she's not interested, the whole day that girl is going to be happy that someone asked her out, even if she thought you were ugly. So I never got a date on college campus. Like, I would ask people out for my classes, I would ask random strangers out, and this is the thing, is I realized I was afraid of asking out strangers, and so I made myself ask out strangers. Like, if I was standing in line in the food court and I saw a girl that was pretty and I was like, man, I would feel so embarrassed to ask her out because what if she rejects me? I made it a personal rule that if I felt embarrassed to ask someone out, I had to ask them out. And so I did. Like, and I didn't get a single date that way. But it built my confidence and I became more accepting of rejection because I was like, whether they say yes or no, at least I know I tried. And I had this sense of like pride that I wasn't too scared to ask out that girl. Like, I did it. Even though she said no, like, she's the one who had to decide to say no, right? So,
well, I think you're saying something really important. I think part of the fear of rejection is that we imagine how horrible it's going to be in our minds, you know?
Yeah.
And so it becomes, like, our imagination becomes more real than what the actual experience might be like. Rejection is painful.
Exactly.
But but what you're saying is, like you did it so much that you were just like, I don't, like, this has happened to me before, I don't even care, you
exactly,
know?
Yeah.
And so it stops being scary because you've been through it 1,000 times. It doesn't even matter. But
exactly.
You found a wife now, so
I know, now I'm
good.
married.
And just putting it out there, I married the most handsome boy I could find. I don't know how all those girls rejected him.
I appreciate that.
And that is the thing, that you are going to find somebody that will feel so flattered that
they're with you.
They're with you, yes.
Or that you asked them out or whatever.
You know how many times it was rejected? Lots of times. And you know what? I found my husband, you know. Mm-hmm. That didn't stop me from finding a person I loved and that I was compatible with. But thank you so much, Ellie, for your time. I think it's been so good spending our time with you and this first episode of Love Dust.
It's like the christening, you know, when they make a boat and then they like, smash the bottle on it. It's the maiden voyage of the podcast, so thanks for joining.
Is there anything else that you would want to say to wrap it up?
Last tips, last words of wisdom.
I would just say it's okay to be afraid to date. It's okay to be afraid of rejection. Like, feelings are information. What you're feeling is telling you something about yourself that you can work on. And like we've talked about, like, find things that you can do to find someone that you are attracted to and like could see a future with. Like you were saying, invest in yourself.
Yeah.
Go out, meet lots of new people, find a good support system that will be like that safe haven when you get rejected, because it will happen.
The question is, are you going to after this podcast?
Yes, you guys are my safe haven.
Thank you for joining us, Ellie, and thank you, friend and friends, for listening to the podcast. We hope that this is a place where you can get answers to your questions, feel support, you know, that positive environment we were talking about. We want to be a platform and a place where you can go to listen to people discussing things that you're relating to and things that you're going through. If you have any questions, then send us a message. We'll link our email underneath the podcast as well. And we'll try to answer it either in a future episode or maybe we'll write you directly. I don't know how this is going to work yet. But stay tuned for the next episode because we're going to keep going through the process. And we'll catch you guys in the next video.
This is your space.
Bye! You can edit that out.
I'll probably leave all of it. Bye.